guys, it's Kales, and I'm coming at you with the 17 books that I read in June. Yeah, 17 books. I'm kind of on a roll here. I also hit this month my goal of reading 100 books, which is crazy to think that I did that in 6 months. I will say, to be fair, 35 of those are graphic novels, so I'm going to make sure that I read the same number of fiction books that I do graphic novels to even it out, because I do want to read 100 physical books, because graphic novels are really easy to get through. But anyway, we're not here to talk about long-term goal, we're here to talk about that short-term goal of June. For those of you who don't know, my friend Allison and I challenged ourselves to read only LGBTQIA books during the month of June, and we talked all about it on our podcast, Why We YA, so you should go check that out. And we had a great June episode talking about what we read, what was the difference between fantasy interpretations of LGBTQ characters and realistic fiction interpretations, and it was very interesting. And so all of these titles, save for one, is LGBTQIA+. So let's get started. The first book that I read that was not LGBTQIA+ was a traveling book that I had received, and I was reaching the deadline on which I needed to get it, and that was These Broken Stars. And I gave this a 1 out of 5 stars. Good God, I did not like this book. It was a trip trying to get through this thing. I was not having this romance, this survival story. It's about these two people who are the only survivors of a spaceship crash, and one's a soldier and one's an elite high-end girl, and then there's like space creature ghosts things in other dimensions, and I did not ship them, I did not relate to them, I did not like them, and therefore I did not like this book. I did like it more that it was a traveling book, and I think that was the only reason I didn't DNF it, was because I had to read it, and because I wanted to see what the other comments were in the traveling book. So thank you, Danny, for the traveling book, and I hope that people enjoy it, but I did not. The second book that I read in June started off my LGBTQIA+ reads, and the first one that I read was Symptoms of Being Human. I really enjoyed this book. This was a great book. It was one of the very first books that I ever read that had a gender fluid character in it, the very first one being The Hammer of Thor by Rick Riordan. Riley was such a fascinating character to me. It was realistic fiction, and so it very much followed Riley's coming out story, and you never learn Riley's birth gender. Even through the whole book, no pronouns are used, so you don't even know what their parents call them or anything like that. And I'm using the they them pronouns because there are no pronouns in the book, and that is a default for me. There are no specific pronouns talked about with Riley, and it's fascinating and really good and really honest, and I frankly learned a lot. Then I read Fire and Stars, which was this awesome fantasy book about this girl who is betrothed to the prince, but she falls in love with the princess instead, and it's great. My only problem with it is that it felt a little bit cliche with the world, and it just was a little generic, but what I really liked was the slow burn of this relationship between the girl and the princess, and oof, it was good. It was not insta-love, and it wasn't even like a hate-to-love relationship. It was just this like slow flirtation and building up to this awesome relationship that you're just like, yes. And I'm really kind of sad that this book is a standalone, because I really want to know what happens to these women, and I really want to know what the rest of this world is like, because she established this really cool magic system and hierarchy, and I just want more. So Audrey Coulhurst, I'm asking you, please write more. Next I read If I Was Your Girl, which is about a transgender girl who moves to a new school because of bullying and other things, and is falling in love with this boy for the first time and trying to just be a girl and not be a transgender girl. And it's about her coming out story and her being her own person, and I like this one because it was written by a transgender woman, so it is an own voices, and transgender woman is on the cover, which is great, and all of that is awesome, and I really appreciated that story, and I was really happy for Amanda throughout the whole thing. I struggled with just some of the blandness of it all, because yes, it's a coming out story, and yes, it was courageous and wonderful in that sense, and some really harsh moments in there, and some really honest, truthful moments, but I was a little bland and high school-y still. Then I read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and I'll admit it was a little while for me since I had read Fangirl, which Carry On is the fan fiction story of Simon Snow, written by Rainbow Rowell that she originally wrote in Fangirl, that Kath writes for, and it was awesome, except for the first 200 pages. That book was the slowest thing ever, and I almost stopped reading it so many times. I was like, why? But then it picked up about halfway through, and I couldn't put it down. It was I couldn't stop reading it, and I was engrossed and just sucking it all up, and I loved it. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars for that because I liked it, but by God, it's slow. Then I received an ARC copy of Mask of Shadows by Lindsay Miller, which is a new book coming out in September, which is a fantasy novel with a gender-fluid main character, and okay, this book is like Hunger Games and Throne of Glass had a baby. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because I really liked it. I thought it wasn't as unique as it could have been because it was this assassin's competition of who's gonna be the king's assassin. There's one of 4 of them and they're all named after jewels, and actually it's not the king, it's the queen, but you know what I mean. And them learning them skills and all this stuff. And I struggled a bit with the main character being like so adept. Like they had gone from never killing anyone to like insta killing a bunch of people and being totally okay with it. Like by the end of the book, the person's killed like 7, 8 people and you're like, wait, you hadn't killed anyone. How are you okay with all this? And yeah, so that was a little bit of a moral struggle for me, but regardless, it was good, and I think it's a series. It's gotta be with that ending, and I want to read more, definitely, so check that out in September. Then I switched over to nonfiction, where I read Being Jazz, My Life as a Transgender Teen, by Jazz Jennings, who is known for her TV show I Am Jazz, and being one of the youngest transgender females out there. She knew at a very young age and was able to be accepted into a loving home and have parents who supported her transition and siblings who supported her transition, and she very much has been a huge media presence for transgender rights. It was a really interesting story. Jazz is 16, so this memoir is written by a 16-year-old, and there were parts of it that were immature and kind of a struggle for me to get through, but I still really enjoyed Jazz's perspective and Jazz's confidence in knowing who she is and her willingness to speak out about that, and her cool little stories about meeting up with different celebrities and feeling very ordinary, even though this is extraordinarily courageous of her. I still think it's really fascinating, and I listened to it, so it was fun to hear her voice. Oh my gosh, then I read one of my least favorite ones ever. It was Boy Meets Boy. I don't even know how I got through this book. It's by David Levithan, and I think it's a parody. It has to be, because I don't even know. The absurdity for me comes in with the idea that, like, the cheerleaders come riding in on Harleys. Like, I don't care that the football quarterback is a drag queen. That's cool. But, like, no school lets the cheerleaders come in on Harleys. And also the main character was a dick. I'm sorry, when you cheat on your boyfriend, expect to get slapped. Like, don't be a crybaby about it. You didn't mess up. Like, this whole love triangle thing, and then he cheats on him. I was like not sympathetic and not having it. I was like, psh, forget this. No thanks. Psh, bye. Then on the flip side, though, I went from one horrible book to another awesome book, and I read Simon vs. the Homo Sapien Agenda, and holy crap, the hype is legit. Guys, that's all I have to say, because I went into this being like, I don't know if I want to read this book, and all the casting news has been coming out for the movie, so it's been on Twitter a lot, and I was like, it's hyped. Do I really want to read it? Yes. The answer is yes. I did. I loved it. It was fantastic, well written, well-rounded characters, and god dang it, I'm really excited for the movie. Then I read Every Heart a Doorway, which was a really interesting short little book. It's like about what would happen if the kids from Narnia came back and went to like a therapy school because they couldn't get back into Narnia. So there's like all these worlds, right? These kids go through these doorways and then they come back to the real world, and in order to cope with the lack of adventure or the lack of magic and being in that other world, they come to this like school boarding house thing where they get treated and meet other kids that have gone other places, and it's really interesting, and there's a murder mystery that happens at the school, and it has an asexual character and a transgender male in it, and what's great about this book is that that's not what the book is about. The characters are just asexual and a transgender male, and it's great. They are diverse, but it's not about their diversity, which is pretty cool, and I want more, and I wish that book was longer because the concept alone just blows my mind. I hated the ending, though. I was not a big fan of that because I thought it was a cop-out, but still really good. Still a great concept. Then I read None of the Above, which is a book about a girl who has sex for the first time and she goes to her OBGYN and learns that she's intersex when she's like 18, and then it comes out at school that she's intersex, and it's about her dealing with coming to terms with that, as well as her depression that comes with that, and being isolated in school, and being bullied, and just, I never knew really what intersex was. I knew it existed, and I knew the biology behind it, but I didn't know that there were different types of intersex, which this book described many of them, and I didn't know about the community so much, or the effects, or the treatments, how one lives that way. It was a great different perspective for me to learn about, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Again, the story was a little high school-y, but that's okay. It's YA realistic fiction. It's gonna be high school-y. Then I read Lumberjanes and Gotham Academy crossover volume 1, which was great. It is a female-on-female romance, even featured on the cover, which is super cool. This plotline sucks. I will be blatantly honest. It is dumb, but it was a crossover I never knew I wanted. These two groups of characters coming together in this way was fantastic, and the way that they interwove them and how they problem solved and interacted and their dialogue, it was great. Plotline sucks, characters rock, I'm okay with that. Then I went to an adult fiction, which was kind of like a short story collection. It was called Don't Let Him Know, and it was about this Indian family that the father and the mother and the son and their relationships told throughout their lives in different orders. The book starts with the son confronting the mother about a letter he finds implying that she had an affair with father's best friend, but actually you later learn when you get from father's perspective that the father was having an affair with his best friend and the mom knew about it. It's this whole like interweaving, it's like a freaking Pinter play, and I loved it. And I thought it was really good. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I was like, where's this book been? It's just so brilliant. And the writing was juicy and good, and it was not just about coming to terms with the father's secret, but also the son's secret of dating an American girl, and the mom's secret of feeling too much tied to her family and her culture, and I just learned so much, and it was really great and really impactful. Then I read Mara Wilson's autobiography, Where Am I Now? Mara Wilson identifies as bi, which is really cool, and she doesn't talk about it in this book because I think this book came out before she announced on Twitter that she's bi. But regardless, it was really fascinating learning about her stories and her history as a childhood actress and losing her mother at age 8 to cancer, as well as her struggles with OCD. And I just found it really relatable and really heartfelt and interesting, and even though we led very different lives, there was a great humanness about this book, and such humor too. I follow Mara Wilson on Twitter, and so it's just really cool to get to see her little posts become one big book, and her voice is woven throughout the whole thing, and I really enjoyed this one too. Oh my goodness, and then I read Tash Hart's Tolstoy, which has been a hyped, excited book here on BookTube, with an asexual main character about this girl who makes this YouTube series of Anna Karenina, and it hits big, and things happen, and chaos ensues, and I fell in love with these characters, and to me, Tash was this great leading character who was ambitious and it was like a good version of a Slytherin. Does that make any sense? Because she has such ambition and is so driven, she kind of forgets about everything around her, and I so find that fascinating about how does she maintain these relationships and how does she maintain them with being an asexual and just kind of condemning herself to never being in love, and what does that mean for her and fame and what she wants to do with her life while keeping her friends. It's just great. It's great. Read it, please. Then I read the Backstagers Issue 1, which I just had to read. Holy crap, I was like, what is this comic and why do I not have it in my possession? It's basically if Lumberjanes took place in a theater with men. Things go on backstage that the actors don't pay attention to, and there's like sci-fi creatures backstage, and everything manages to get done because Backstagers rule. The last book that I read in the month of June was The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black, and oh my gosh, Holly Black is queen. That is all I have to say. That and this book is fantastic. I am so glad that it's a standalone, but I also kind of wish there was more, but I don't know what she would do with more because I just want Hazel and Ben in my life forever, but that's okay. I just love Holly Black's writing. I love her world building. She sucks you in right away, and the fact that she can like use YouTube videos and Faye in the same sentence and in the same world and have it make sense, fine. works great for me. I will buy what she's selling every time. Take my money. I love Holly Black. Very excited to read more of her stuff. So those are my 17 books. I hope I didn't bore you throughout the entirety of this video. Please let me know what you read during the month of June. If you haven't already, because it's very late in the year, thank you guys for your patience with me putting up videos. I've had some family stuff going on. Everything's good. I just needed to take some time doing that. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do, and making videos is awesome and makes me feel better, so I'm glad I am having time to get back to it. Yeah. That being said, until next time, guys, bye! I have popcorn kernels stuck in my teeth. I smell Spider-Man today. I'm gonna be able to talk. I need to go floss.